something of legacy. It's an opportunity to own something unique that's no longer made, and that's why they're valuable. That's why they're important. I have a Defender 110 myself that I drive like a tractor every day when the weather's good, and they're really fun to drive. They bring a big smile to your face. And every time that I'm driving it, even if it's in Prescott, Arizona, I feel like I'm on an expedition. So which is really special. So we've got the folks from Heritage Driven here. Why don't you guys give a little overview about your organization, when you started, and what you guys do?
Sure. My name is Doug Turner, and I'm the founder. Chris Taylor is co-founder of the company.
Hi.
The company was founded, got to be almost 6 years ago, more or less by accident. And I was going through an early pre-midlife crisis and thought I would pull my kids out of school and go on a long overland adventure. I'm from New Mexico, so we spent a lot of time in the outdoors. And I met some folks in Sully Hull where these vehicles have been made, and had them build a custom rig for me, which was diesel, dual electrics. Chris also bought one, although his hadn't been completely finished. And just before it was supposed to be shipped out to me in New Mexico, their yard was stolen, or broken into, and both these trucks were stolen. My wife came down and she was like, "What?" And so I flew over and met with these guys, and they said, "You want to do this again?" And they said, "We're not doing this anymore because U.S. Customs had made it very difficult to get these trucks into the U.S. For a period of years, there were a lot of people who were taking new trucks, because the platform hasn't really changed a lot over the years, and putting illegal bins on them. And you probably anyone who's been in the Rover space has paid attention to those cars getting crushed and pounded. So I thought, well, how difficult could it be to actually build these here in the U.S.? And so I ended up buying 5 trucks and a 30-foot container of parts from Land Rover and other suppliers, and shipped all that stuff out to New Mexico. And as it turns out, it was pretty hard. So it probably took us, I'd say, 18 months to build our first vehicle. And people who are in the sort of mechanics and fabricators are an interesting crowd and sometimes troubled. And so we would have people who would show up and they'd be brilliant, and then they would just vanish. But Chris and I have slogged. Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, I've been a car guy my whole life. Honestly, I wasn't that familiar with the Defender platform when Doug talked me into buying one. I guess I'm easily influenced. So, we brought these trucks over, and really it was a learning experience. And I tell you, it's been really exciting learning how modular they can be and how many cool things you can do to them, and kind of the experiences you can have in a truck that can really go anywhere and do anything just about.
Well, and I would even say that part of the reason that a Defender is special is because it doesn't actually need to be changed much for it to be special. And I think about things like BMW motorcycles, Land Rover 110s, a lot of the equipment that you see in this store. It's not trying to be relevant in this moment. It's trying to be relevant for a much longer period of time. And I think that those things they are attractive, and they are attractive as an investment. There's a reason why a lot of people who buy Defenders are affluent, because they recognize that it's different. It is something that harkens to heritage. Maybe when they were growing up, they saw the Mutual of Omaha and the Land Rover coming across the African Sahara. I've spent a lot of time in Africa in Defenders, and there's no other vehicle like it. I've also spent time driving Land Cruisers in Africa, and it's different. Sure. A Defender with the top off and the windows down, you forget the fact that it's a tractor, and you're completely immersed in the experience. So one of the things that I noticed that was different about your vehicles is that they have a very modern drivetrain, which is probably the biggest challenge, is interfacing modern drivetrains into a 60-year-old concept.
Well, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head with it being attractive. We get a lot of calls, and people are just, they have that Africa Safari image or British Special Forces image, and then I tell them this is not a Range Rover, this is a tractor. And that's something that Chris and his team have spent a lot of time working on. And why don't you talk about that?
Well, yeah, and so any vehicle has to be designed for how you're going to use it. If you're going to be driving a Defender 110 every single day, there's a lot of the things that are kind of cool and fun when you drive it occasionally that become not so cool and fun when you drive them every single day. It can be an experience to break down on the side of the road in the middle of nowhere, but it's not a lot of fun if it happens frequently. So, we spend a lot of time updating the drivetrain to meet kind of that daily driver expectation. Make sure that you have good fuel economy, good reliability, air conditioning, heating that works everywhere you go, that kind of stuff. And that, our name is Heritage Driven. Our goal is to bring the kind of modern amenities into the heritage of the classic Defender. We really are trying not to change the truck so much as just make it fit kind of a different daily driven type of experience. And so a lot of our customers want to have something that's exciting and different, but also want to be able to drive it every day and take their kids to school and not have to worry about it. So that's kind of our focus on drivetrain package and making sure that everything works as a system. We're not stuffing a big engine in there without changing the rest of the drivetrain components. We're making sure that everything works together. It doesn't break. It can handle the power. It can give you the reliability and the economy that you're looking for.
Yeah, which I think is important when someone looks to own a vehicle like that. They want to enjoy every day. It's in its original form. For me, when it's cold out, I roll the windows up. When it's hot out, I roll the windows down. And if I make it to 55 miles an hour, it's because it's downhill. And I never stop smiling. I love it for the entire time that I'm in it. But it's certainly for someone who wants to drive a vehicle like this every day, a modern drivetrain and a lot of those comforts and conveniences do make it a lot more livable. So I think that's certainly one of the things that you guys have done so well. There's really no other upfitter that I'm aware of in the United States that's doing these vehicles at the volume and at the level of quality that you guys are. So that's certainly a rarity to be able to buy a Defender that you can drive every day like that.
There are a few other quirks to the vehicle. I mean, if there's a original right-hand drive Defender out there. Whose is that? Is that someone who's still in here?
It's beautiful.
So you're tight right there on the window. Yeah, and that's how they all are. Some people love them, and I don't have a problem with it, but plenty of people do. And so what we've done is we've actually re-engineered the bulkhead, the whole firewall of the vehicle to do a couple things. One, to shift that over a little bit. So if ours are all converted to left-hand side, so you get a couple more inches for the driver. And how many more inches are we giving the passengers?
6 inches more on the passenger side, 3.5 on the driver's side. 3.5 inches when your elbow's on the window might as well be a mile. So
you're saying your bulkhead is actually wider?
No, there's just a lot of unused space in the tunnel, and then also on the inside of the
footwell.
Yeah.
So we try to make changes that are subtle, that work to make the truck more efficient and more comfortable, but don't change the character of it. And that's one of those. Like you normally wouldn't know what the shape of your firewall is because what do you care? It's behind the carpet, behind the hood there. But there's actually quite a bit of unused space that we've reclaimed to give it back to the passenger compartment. So even though we have a much bigger engine and an big automatic transmission, we've been able to shape that whole piece in there to give the driver a little bit more comfort. I remember reading an article years ago that said, it was a British magazine, it was talking about those Land Rover drivers who think they're so cool having their arm out the window as they drive down the road, really aren't trying to be cool, their arm just doesn't fit. So that's one of the reasons we pushed the seat over. I'm a bigger guy, and when I drove it for the first time, I thought, this is something we need to address because I don't fit.
Well, the other thing is, as you know, in those Defenders, you don't have much sort of dash. It's just a kind of an odd thing, and you put maybe a little room for a map, and maybe you can put a stereo in sideways. And so we actually build our own dash assemblies in our shop that we can integrate all the vents, all the stereo system, and all the other components. So it's a much cleaner sort of interface between the driver and the control of the vehicle. So just lots of little things that you might not normally think about, but if you've driven the tractor like you have, you know.
Well, and I think this is a good opportunity for people to be able to ask questions as well, and it can be on any topic. We can talk about travel, we can talk about Land Rovers, we can talk about other vehicles as well. If you've got some questions, we obviously don't want to capitalize on the night because there's some excellent mezcal going on over there as well, and some great conversations.
I've been lusting after this vehicle as a single man for many years, and now I'm married and I've got 2 young kids. So now I'm lusting after as a family vehicle for the experiences that it can bring and the access that we have, particularly here in Southern California with so much extraordinary geography that I might not be able to access by foot with my family, particularly with my wife and my kids. Can you guys share some of the family experiences that you've had with your Defenders?
Well, you've had some breakdowns, not in ours, but in the ones prior to getting fixed. Because we get these things off of containers, and sometimes they've got water in the transmissions, but we take them out and they drive, and we've had some of those adventures. But in these, I've got 3 kids and 2 big dogs, and I have taken this, well, not this one, but a truck that's very similar to this one out on forest roads, up in northern New Mexico, in Arizona, and you can get to some great places. You pull over in a field, and you're there. I mean, this thing has got a great awning. It's like what do we call this thing?
It's a 270 awning.
So it spins all the way around. Tent goes up, and I mean, you can just have a great time. Dogs are a little bit frightened of the lift kit on this thing. They don't like to jump up in the back, but.
So, that's exactly, at least from my perspective, what I'm looking for in a 4-wheel drive truck is to be able to take. I have 3 kids as well, dogs. So I take this camping with my kids. It's a lot of fun, and especially if we go on groups. It's just special because everyone else is driving whatever their family vehicle is, and they're going to camp and then maybe hike out. But we can go all the way into wherever we're going. We have this special car there. Everybody knows it's different. You can see us a mile away. That's not a normal car. That's not something you see on American roads normally. And my kids love it. We've had a lot of really great experiences, and mostly in northern New Mexico. It's a good place to go where we're from, just camping out in the woods. Like Doug mentioned, I've gotten stuck a couple times when I've brought trucks that came straight over. There's something fun about driving a right-hand drive vehicle in the U.S., and it's definitely a different experience. So it's kind of fun to take them when they first get over. Until you get stuck in the middle of nowhere, that's loses a little bit of its fun. Yeah, it's been a great experience. And as far as the 110 goes, you can fit a ton of stuff in these things. So with 3 kids in car seats, they're close to each other, but they all fit in there. All our gear, we have a great time with it. It's equipped like this one is with the rooftop tent. That's a great time. Being able to sleep up on top of the truck there, you can see the stars out through the windows. It's a lot of fun.
Well, and there's a couple things about Land Rovers that actually make them special, just functionally. The second row of seats, they call it stadium seating. Land Rover was really the one to bring that to the market. So it's elevated above the front row of seats, so the kids can actually see better down the road. There's these beautiful pieces of glass that go down along the top that allows the kids to look out and see the trees as they're going by. They're basically a giant box, and because of that, they're very space efficient. And also, gratefully, they don't tend to have very fragile interiors. Like if you look at a 2020 Land Rover Discovery, it's just a giant ball of plastic, and every single surface is just asking to get scratched or marred. Whereas most of this vehicle, is like metal and like Defender, because I can haul plywood and everything in the back of it quite easily. John, who's standing at the back of this, he has a Defender 110 as well, and it's his only vehicle. It's what he drives every day in LA. So I think they're very livable in that way.
I mean, I don't know. There's a statistic out there that, and you may know this better than I do, but something on the range of 80% of these vehicles built from the beginning are still running. I mean, they may not be running well, but they're still running. I mean, they are a bulletproof truck. Like I say, we get these vehicles in and they are beat up because we have to bring them into the U.S. as original 25-year-old trucks so we can legally import them. And some of them are in rough shape. We get them Ministry of Defense trucks, farm vehicles, and they still go. which is great. Which is really one of the reasons why I was interested in it. You know, not a whole lot of computerization, just a good rig.
Yeah, they're very serviceable. That is a true statistic. The one I like even better is that for the majority of the developing world, the first vehicle that they ever saw was a Land Rover. That's not true for people that are growing up in the world now, but 50 years ago or so, when that was first shared, the Land Rover was really the first vehicle that was getting back into these remote areas of Africa and other parts of the world. And the reason why they were popular is because they were ultimately serviceable, which means they were really easy for the owner to work on and to repair in the field. And that's why they are built the way that they are. It ended up being a timeless design. It ended up being incredibly charming, but it started off being that they needed it to be serviced, and they needed the panels to be easily removed with a rivet gun and put in a new panel, because you just banged it into a tree on the farm. So these vehicles are still very serviceable, even in this configuration, really easy to work on. So what else do we got for questions from the crowd? John.
I have a concern about, it feels like we're in a golden era of sorts, because all these 25-year-old cars are coming in, and it's a gravy train, and there's a lot of love. But it seems to me in California, this never filters down to California. Like, these cars go to free states. Do you have any advice? Because California feels like a minefield.
We are trying really hard to get in that minefield and survive it. So this truck right here is built to what we believe is going to be the California spec. You never quite know until it's through car, but everything that we know right now, it checks every single box as configured. This should get through CARB, and this truck should be a California truck. Fingers crossed. You never really know. It's tough. If you want to be able to buy any car, maybe a second residence in Nevada.
I see a lot of Defenders on the street here, and they have South Dakota plates, Arizona plates, and a car that's for sale in California with a California plate. It's what, 10, 20,000 more?
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Right.
Yeah, it's probably more. Now, there are some of these, they brought 500 Defenders into the U.S. in 1993.
110s. 500
110s. I mean, they brought the 90 in for several years. And you could get it in any color that you wanted as long as it was white, except Ralph Lauren got a black one. Those cars were registered in California, so you can get a North American spec vehicle, which is almost identical to this. They put a sort of an idiotic cage around the top, which wasn't actually attached to the frame, so it was more or less worthless. You can get those vehicles, and then you can modify them here in California, and you don't have to buy it. But those come at a premium because they're so scarce. I mean, those are $8 grand.
Yeah, and that's the truck that John's got.
Oh, well, there you go.
For the record, it's like 120.
Rare vehicle.
Well, why don't we take yours and we can,
No.
Yeah, his is as original as they get.
Yeah, but you're right.
Yeah, you've traveled all over the world in 110s. Is there any kind of experiences that you can share of what's built some cool memories either on this platform or road?
Yeah, I think the thing that's most important is that any vehicle that we have is really just the magic carpet to an experience. And I'm really cautious to ever tell someone that the vehicle is the reason for it. Now, in my mind, I take more pleasure out of certain activities when I'm driving something that I enjoy. So if it's a Land Cruiser, it feels like I'm operating a tool, whereas if I'm in a Defender, it feels like I'm operating a Leica camera. And that's because it just adds a little bit more experience and flavor to that. So traveling in South America in 110s or traveling in Iceland or in 110s, that was probably one of my more enjoyable Defender trips, was circumnavigating Iceland in just a totally stock Defender 110. But they're very special cars. But I think the most important thing is that your goal should be to go experience the world and travel and see these places. Don't focus too much on the vehicle. If you have the means, which of course a vehicle like this is expensive, then it's a rounding error. It doesn't matter in the experience. But if you have to make a choice between buying something that's expensive and just taking what you've got, take what you've got and go see the world. That would be the thing that I would encourage everyone here to focus on first.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I have someone who wants one of these, but also lives a life that requires daily driving. And I want to know if you can really tell us what the daily driver experience is when you're in an urban setting, because our opportunities to go off-road and on the road are a little bit limited because of you got to make money, and you have people who create it who rely on you and
So I can actually speak to that because I've driven 110s even a lot in California. The only thing that will be a downside is that every time you go to fill up the car or you stop at an intersection, people are going to want to talk to you. So it's going to take some of your time. But for me personally, I love riding old motorcycles or driving older vehicles in an urban setting because you actually stand out. And it's not because I'm looking for attention, it's because I want the other drivers to pay attention to me. So I think from a daily driving perspective, it's actually a distinct advantage. One of the reasons why I actually like to drive Defenders internationally, think about Guatemala or when I was in Tajikistan or Kyrgyzstan or these other locations, people don't want to steal Defenders. They don't for a reason because they're not in high volume, they're not in high demand. People want to carjack you for a Land Cruiser all day long, but the carjacker doesn't know what to do with a Defender 110. They can't sell the car, they can't sell the parts. So they're actually not high theft risks. They stand out, you have a great view of the road. I think it'd be an awesome car to drive around LA, personally.
Well, and these are automatic. I mean, so most of the vehicles that we get, in fact, all the vehicles we get from Europe are all standard. These have been all completely redone, so automatic windows, remote doors, proximity sensor in the remote. I mean, this has got all the mod cons that you want. It's got, I think, 3 layers of mass-loaded vinyl in the interior, so it's relatively quiet. Although I think Jonah, you were saying after 14 hours, and it wasn't so quiet. So this has air conditioning. I mean, it's got all the stuff, but you feel a little burly in it because it's a big truck. I mean, it is a brick.
It's kind of a choose your own adventure truck too, because you don't have to have all that, right? If I'm driving, we've driven this exact vehicle quite a bit throughout Albuquerque and in other places for shows. So urban setting, in parking garages, and all over the place. And Scott's exactly right. It's like you just joined a club. That you didn't know you were a part of that club, but everywhere you go, everyone's honking at you, waving at you, taking pictures of you everywhere you go. It's kind of cool. It's kind of cool.
And I grew up in Los Angeles, and you could spend an hour or an hour and a half on a commute, and you never get that time back. You might as well be doing it in something that brings a little bit of a smile to your face. That's the way I look at it. I mean, you can't get that. You can't get away from it because it's how you get to work. It's how you make your living. So what's wrong with making it something interesting?
I always tell people we sell smiles per gallon, not miles per gallon.
All right, what else we got for a couple more questions?
What's the range on your truck?
It depends on how it's configured. Yeah, that makes a joke every time. No, it depends on how it's configured. So the diesel, the R2.8 that we typically put in, is a Cummins diesel engine. Gets really good gas mileage if you stay out of the throttle. If you just drive it normally, you'll get great gas mileage, up to 20 miles a gallon. Some of our customers are getting, probably do better than that, frankly. The stock tank, I want to say the stock 110 tank is maybe 19 gallons, around there. I don't remember exactly how much it is. Sounds about right? So we have a modified tank that we use on some of our larger builds that can be put into this one. It looks 35 gallons, so almost double the range right there. Yeah. The ones in Europe will come with side saddle tanks. Those aren't terribly safe. We don't like using those, but because it's side impacts, it can rupture. But yeah, we can get quite a bit. I forgot to go ask that question. I'm just looking around now. Yeah, we can get quite a bit of range out of them.
But not on this one here.
This one's a little different story. This one's definitely leans towards the smiles per gallon versus miles per gallon. With the LS engine, you're probably going to be seeing around 15 miles per gallon. That's got a 19. That's got a stock galley tank, so it's got 19.
What else we got for questions? All right, and we're going to be around. These guys will come over by the truck, and they'll give you a detailed tour if you'd like. If you want to talk to me about traveling somewhere in the world, or you'd like to submit content to Overland Journal or anything else, I'd love to talk to you as well. So thanks everybody for
And
coming.
I'd also like to thank Jonah and Davide for helping make this happen. It's really great to
Thank you very much. Fantastic idea. Great
Yeah, what a great space. What a great space. And if you get hot, you can go into the fridge.
freezer. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. We actually have a